Station, WTIM.
And welcome in to WTIM, your information station. I'm Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Thank you so much to our sponsors, People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. In studio, we have Illinois State Representative Brad Halbrook of the 102nd District. How are you today, Representative?
Good. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be in Taylorville this morning.
Without a doubt.
Bright and early.
We're really good to
Kind
have
of
you
bright and early.
in Taylorville. Yeah, we're still in that early half of the morning there, but we're really glad to have you in our studios today. And amidst many things happening throughout state, local government here, so we're happy to have you in here. First on our list of things to talk about today, it's budget. The budget has been passed. There's many conversations happening on both sides of the aisle. We want to know your thoughts,
Right.
Brad Halbrook. So just initially with the budget, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah. So the big top lines is, it's a record spend, $53 billion. There's more borrowing in here. There was an expansion of about $2.5 billion of borrowing. And then there's more taxing, somewhere between $750 million to $1 billion worth of more taxing here on our job providers and other people across the state.
Sure. So record spending, and there's a couple of different arms throughout this bill that, there are some positives and there are some negatives to it. Let's start with the grocery tax, because this is going to be for per city, they're going to have to make some decisions here. So what are you seeing there with the grocery tax?
Right. So the grocery tax repeal, was done 2 years ago during the election cycle. It was a temporary relaxation of that 1%. We thought that was a good idea. We called for that to be made permanent. And the governor talked about that in his budget speech back in February to repeal that grocery tax. The issue is it doesn't really cost the governor any money. Sure. That money's all collected locally and stays locally. Well, that idea continued to gain momentum. When we finally got the language, that bill was 181 pages long to repeal the grocery tax.
Okay.
Now, the details is it not only repeals the grocery tax, but it allows the local city councils or county government to reinstitute that without a voter referendum. So we like the idea of repealing taxes or reducing taxes, but we also like the idea of tax increases or borrowing to go before the voters. That doesn't allow for that in this bill. What it also does, just a few other points, is in Cook and Chicago, or in Chicago and Cook County, there's an opportunity for them to put on an additional 1% tax. There's an additional 1.25% tax for the RTA. A 911 surcharge. All these taxes can be stacked on top of each other. There's a hotel tax of up to 3%. It specifically lays out Sangamon and Cook County in there, but every county can institute this 3% hotel tax if they want. So in a 181-page bill to repeal the grocery tax, there's a whole bunch of other taxes that can be instituted.
Now, is that almost commonplace now with 181 pages in this bill? I mean, I thought it was just on the grocery tax, but you talked about 911 taxes there and hotel tax. Is this a normal thing to kind of lump them in together?
Well, they're related to some extent. They're a tax, so that's kind of skirts the Constitution's single issue subject matter. But this is kind of one of the ways that Springfield does business is, hey, look over here, we're going to give you this, but then over here we're going to do these things.
It's interesting to get this inside look and to hear you explain it in this way there, because maybe you are for the repeal of the grocery tax, but not some of the others. You're left at a crossroads there.
Right. And what's interesting is it also provided in this bill is the money is collected locally, goes to Springfield now. They take a cut and then they send it back to the locals. Okay, rather than it all stay in there and there wasn't those fees prior or the way it is today, that all changes with this new legislation. So I think that's a bad deal. Again, this doesn't cost the governor any money, so he's all in on it. And that's just not a good way of. I mean, this is going to cost a lot of our medium-sized communities throughout Central Illinois $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 is what it's estimated to cost some of our local communities here, like Taylorville, Effingham, and some others.
Yeah, I was going to ask what it meant to towns in relation to the grocery tax in relation to towns like us, and you mentioned kind of the $500,000 that won't be in the mix from the grocery tax.
Right. I mean, it's going to come out of your the community's budget or the city council's budget, and so if it's 500,000, that could be potentially 4, 5, 6 employees, 7 employees, depending on the package. What's going to happen there? Is the city council of these communities going to reinstate this tax? What will happen with that? And the idea of not letting it go before the voters, I think, is a really bad idea. I mean, I think that if that needs to happen.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you called it a referendum, but what type of referendum is it?
So it'd be a levy or a tax increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Awesome. So sticking on the budget conversation here, many other things were talked about aside from the grocery tax here. Talk about migrants and the conversation that was happening there.
Yeah. So the big deal with the budget was it was estimated to be about $1 billion out of balance. And when you look at the numbers that you could see, the spending on illegal aliens was about $1 billion.
Wow.
So if you would just peel that spending back, then the budget would be balanced. But instead, the governor had a package of revenue enhancements, which is code for tax increases on business and other employers of somewhere between $750 million to $1 billion worth of tax increases. That's where the fun began at about 3 a.m. And so anyhow, but that's kind of problematic that there was multiple locations that, I mean, $200 million for state employees for Ozemic prescriptions. $200 million just for one prescription was included in this.
What kind of?
Ozemic, that's the diabetic. Ozemic, yeah.
Okay, I was thinking it was maybe that one. $200,000?
$200 million.
$200 million?
Right.
Holy cow.
So there you have a budget that's out of balance, $1 billion. So $200 million is a fifth or 20% of that number.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just some of the, I mean, would you call these, would that be discretionary? What kind of funds are those? I mean, that's pharmaceutical, but I didn't know.
Well, it would just be a part of the package that employees could be entitled to.
State employees. Okay, interesting. $200 million.
And that's a big number.
It's humongous.
Right. I mean, you know, we had ISB, the State Board of Education, and Representative Crespo became before our Appropriations Committee. ISB was asking for $35 million. Representative Crespo was asking for $188 million to fund education of newcomers, illegal aliens. So that's something over $200 million there to fund education of students in school that were, had English learning issues. But instead, none of that got funded, but we funded $200 million additional for prescriptions.
Interesting. My next question, I was going to try to go the educational route there. Anything in the budget aside from the migrant education? Was there anything in there to advance education in Illinois?
Well, so always, because of the evidence-based funding formula, there's always an additional $350 million. Wow. That's just always, and that's stacked on top of the stuff that's been in existence since 2017 when that law became into existence. So I think the number is getting somewhere between $10 and $11 billion for K-12 education, in addition to funding higher ed. But yeah, there's just built-in accelerators, if you will, sure, on the K-12 funding. And that continues to grow at a $350 million pace. What's interesting is CPS, Chicago Public Schools, had came down one day. There was about 600 school teachers and employees showed up along with the mayor. They were asking for $1 billion additional funding for CPS, Chicago Public Schools. None of that happened. That's interesting. Yeah, there's lots of different things like that.
That story was pretty unbelievable to read, of 600 educators. You said 600.
I think it was about 600.
Yeah,
that's what we were told.
Yes, that number is exactly what I read, making their way to the Capitol there to push for those funds. That's unbelievable right there. Another thing that came out of the budget, totally switching gears, unless you had anything else from the education side.
Nothing more on the education stuff.
In terms of taxation, betting, sports betting, I saw that was in the budget.
Yeah, so that was part of the revenue package, was an increase in a couple of the video gaming terminal tax, and the sports betting thing was some stepped up increases on the taxes there. There's some other things that affect businesses and the collection of sales tax that would allow the Springfield to keep more of those dollars of sales tax that was collected that typically stayed locally. Multiple things like that. Again, that's kind of in the weeds about kind of how that all works. But again, when you total all those increases up, it's somewhere between $750 million to $1 billion worth of tax increases.
Wow. And with gaming parlors, as you mentioned, sports betting, is that maybe a more worthy thing to tax, would you call it, in the state, and then putting dollars maybe back in the hands of more people out there?
Well, I think anytime you raise taxes, it takes money out of the pockets of the men and women that earn that money, that basically limits their freedom. Now, if people want to spend money on video gaming and the like, that's fine. But to take the money away that was promised to locals for their communities or what was attenuated, which is what's happening, I think that's wrong. But there's just this need to tax more in the state of Illinois.
Really amazing words here from Illinois State Representative Brad Halbrook, and he's really given us a great budget breakdown this morning. We're going to take a quick timeout with Representative Brad Halbrook, but we'll have much more from him after this quick timeout. I'm Tim Zalabak, your host of the WTIM Morning Show. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
Your information station, WTIM.
Could you use some extra cash in your savings account? Then you need to sign up for the People's Bank and Trust Save by Spending Roundup program. I'm Nicole Maloli from People's Bank and Trust. Simply use your debit card like you always do, and we will round up your purchase to the next dollar. The extra change is then transferred to your savings account. There's never been an easier way to save. Call 888-PBT-1954 today to find out more. People's Bank and Trust, we put you and your savings first. People's Bank and Trust, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Hey there, it's Ramey Miller, personal and business coach, and also owner of Run Deep Coaching, and a Taylorville native now living in the Northern Illinois area. I have the pleasure of helping people strengthen the relationship with themselves and others virtually, no matter where they are. Seeing what's possible for people is the highlight of my job. For example, I support people through job transitions, relationship changes, and developing new habits. Recently, I hosted a workshop and people walked away with hope, courage, feeling worthy and seen. I would love to connect with you. Feel free to reach out for a virtual complimentary 60-minute conversation to see if it's a good fit to work together one-on-one, or we can just simply discuss any upcoming events. My website is www.rundeepcoaching.com. That's www.rundeepcoaching.com. I am sending you so much support.
Spring is in the air, and with it comes the symphony of nature's sounds. But are you missing out on the beauty this season due to hearing loss? I'm Crystal Baker, owner of Specialized Hearing Solutions located in Taylorville and Shelbyville. Don't let another spring season pass you by in silence. Visit Specialized Hearing Solutions today and embrace the vibrant sounds of this beautiful season. Call 217-824-0411 to schedule your consultation. Specialized Hearing Solutions, where the sounds of spring come to life.
If you're looking for a healthcare provider that truly cares about you and your family's well-being, the SIU Center for Family Medicine is now accepting new patients. They're available to help you live your healthiest life. Regular checkups with a healthcare provider can be the key to a healthier you. Take charge of your health and join their caring community of patients. Call 217-824-1134 or click their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com to schedule your first appointment. At the SIU Center for Family Medicine, they're not just your healthcare providers, they're your partners in wellness.
Thank Byers Chiropractic in Pana for all your spring and summer aches, pains, and injuries. Let me, Dr. Bill Byers, and Dr. Ethan Harper help you. Learn more at byerschiro.com or click on my banner at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Find out about available units at Taylorville's Valley View Mobile Home Park, 913 North Taylorville Boulevard, by clicking the Valley View Mobile Home Park icon on the obits page of TaylorvilleDailyNews.com.
Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome back to WTIM, your information station. We are in the midst of the WTIM morning show with Illinois State Representative Brad Halbrook of the 102nd District. Thanks so much to the stream sponsors, People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. That first half with Representative Halbrook, we talked all about the budget. We're going to stick right on it because the representative, there was some shenanigans, as you have called them, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and some last minute moves by Democrats. Break this one down for us.
Yeah, so just to give you just a little backstory, a week and a half ago, we were trying to get adjourned by Friday the 24th of May. That didn't happen. We went back in on Saturday, spent all day, basically left about 9:30 Saturday night the 25th. It appeared at that point in time that all the budget bills were going to be in the Senate, and they didn't get that passed on Saturday night the 25th. We got word that we would come back in noon Tuesday, which we did. Finally got rolling late in the evening, if you will, about 9 o'clock at night. About 12:10 Wednesday morning, we adjourned that previous day. And the reason why this was all kind of important is bills have to be read in each chamber on 3 different days. That's in the Constitution. Okay, so the budget bill passed out of the Senate on a Sunday night. They came in on Sunday. the 26th. And so that bill came to the House on Monday, day one. Tuesday was day two. And so while we were there, they just kept us overnight, if you will, in the chamber. We adjourned about 12:05 Wednesday morning. 15, 20 minutes later, we gavel back in. That's day three. Okay. And so then there was many pieces of legislation, but when it was all said and done at 5 a.m., there was 5 major pieces of legislation that passed. One of them was the revenue bill. This is where it gets kind of interesting. The revenue bill was the $750 million to $1 billion worth of fee and tax increases. And so nobody really wants to vote for tax increases. Sure. Okay. And so the bill came up, got 60 votes. Our floor leader called for a vote verification. This means that when the names of those that voted yes need to be in their seats. Now you would think, yeah, you're voting on it, you're elected, everybody should be there. Well, you take a restroom break, or you go take a lunch break, or you have constituents out in the hallway want to visit for a few minutes. But what happened this night, if you will, or in the wee hours on Wednesday morning last week, was there was a couple representatives that were not even in the building. They weren't on the Capitol complex. They had left town. Okay, so we called out one of them, Representative Ortiz, and they waited several minutes. He didn't return. The vote was 60, takes 60 to pass. Since he was not there, that peeled that vote off. So at 59, that revenue bill failed. Well, there was then a procedural move put into place called postponed consideration. Okay, the bill, after a few minutes, came back up, was voted on again. And at this point in time, it looked like it was kind of, when you look at the board, you could see 60, 61, 62 votes, and it was just kind of going back and forth there for a few seconds, and it finally landed at 60 votes. Again, our floor leader called for a vote verification. Okay, what was interesting, there was a Republican that had voted the 60th vote. He left the building. Now, this was kind of evidently an intentional move. And so again, when they pulled that name off, it failed that bill again. So under you get 2 shots to do this. That's just kind of the way it is. You get 2 opportunities to vote for bill. The original time, postpone consideration. If it fails, it's done. Well, after several minutes of back and forth, there was a rule invoked called suspend the rules. Now, we see suspension of the rules late in the year, if you will, late in the spring session when time is short, amendments are moving. They do a motion to suspend the rules to get bills posted to committee in a short, like within an hour. It just waives the posting requirements. Never had seen it for anything else until Wednesday morning. And so a rule or this motion to suspend the rules, basically, postpone consideration was done. They brought the bill back for a third time.
Wow. Postpone consideration.
Postpone, yeah. And so they suspend. So now it's like, okay, so then the bill passes with 60 votes. What's interesting is, okay, out of the, 80, 90, 100 rules that we adopt every 2 years to govern how the House operates, do they mean anything now? Because now we've seen that they just make a motion to suspend the rules. Oh, goodness. That's the question. Okay. So it's like, okay, so we have these rules. It's a lengthy package. And so if somebody just doesn't like the way things are going, they just make a motion to suspend the rules. And with 78 members, they can suspend the rules on 60 votes.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down the way you did for us, Representative Halbert, because the way we read stories, we're not going to be able to understand it quite like that. And you said you haven't quite seen this used in this fashion before.
Right. No, again, it's always, late in the spring session or when we're bumping up against deadlines is suspend the rules on posting requirements to get bills heard in committee is typically what we've seen that for, but never seen it before in a budget discussion or a revenue discussion.
Wow. Well, we've seen it now in 2024, and we're, the budget is now released and it is passed. And Representative Halbrook, we are in our last minute. Any final words for our listeners?
Yeah, well, I just appreciate you taking time to have me in, and just let people know that they can find us at rephalbrook.com is the official site. We have an office in Shelbyville. We have an office in Effingham. We're trying to set up some town halls for the summer. We haven't set any of those dates yet. We've been in Taylorville multiple times last year doing the town halls, and we're putting that presentation together, trying to pick some dates and locations. So look for that.
Perfect.
If you would.
Perfect. Representative Halbrook, thank you so much for taking
You're
the time.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That was Illinois State Representative Brad Halbrook of the 102nd District. Always a great time to have him in. We learn a whole lot. This has been the WTIM Morning Show, and thanks so much to the stream sponsors, People's Bank and Trust. where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. You're listening to WTIM, your information station.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville, 96.1 W241 CF Taylorville, 107.5